You're standing in the African savanna 400,000 years ago. Your body is weak compared to the predators around you. No claws, no fangs, no venom. A leopard can tear you apart in seconds. A hyena can crush your bones with its jaws. Even a baboon is stronger than you, pound for pound. And yet somehow, your species is about to flip the entire food chain upside down. There's a weapon in your hand. It weighs almost nothing. It's made from wood and stone, materials that seem laughably primitive. But with this tool, you can kill from a distance that no predator can match. You can bring down animals 10 times your size. You can hunt without ever getting close enough to be hurt. This weapon didn't just change how humans hunted, it changed what humans were. It transformed us from cautious scavengers into the most feared predators on Earth. And the crazy part? Most people have no idea just how revolutionary this technology actually was. Today, we're talking about the Atlatl and the throwing spear, the weapon that made humans apex predators tens of thousands of years before the bow and arrow was even invented. And today, we will be breaking it down. When most people think about ancient weapons, they picture bows and arrows, swords, maybe spears used for stabbing. But there's a massive gap in that mental timeline. The bow and arrow only appeared around 70,000 years ago, possibly earlier, but the evidence is unclear. Swords came even later, in the Bronze Age, around 3000 BCE. But humans were hunting large, dangerous game long before any of these weapons existed. So what were they using? The answer is simpler and more brilliant than you might expect. Throwing spears, also called javelins, and a tool called the Atlatl, or spear thrower, that could launch those spears with devastating force. Let me paint a picture of what hunting looked like before projectile weapons. Around 2 million years ago, our ancestor Homo erectus was spreading across Africa and into Asia. These early humans had stone tools, sure. Hand axes, scrapers, cutting flakes. They could butcher a carcass if they found one. But actually killing large animals? That was a different story. The evidence suggests that early Homo erectus was primarily a scavenger. They would wait for lions or hyenas to make a kill, then sneak in and steal scraps of meat, or crack open bones to get at the marrow that other predators couldn't access. It was a dangerous, opportunistic lifestyle. You had to be smart about timing, quick on your feet, and willing to accept that you were not at the top of the food chain. Some researchers believe Homo erectus engaged in persistence hunting, chasing animals for hours until they collapsed from exhaustion. This is possible, and modern humans can certainly do this, but it requires very specific conditions, incredible endurance, and it's extremely calorie intensive. Not exactly a reliable strategy when you're trying to feed a group. Then, there's ambush hunting with thrusting spears. Archaeological evidence shows that by around 400,000 years ago, humans were crafting wooden spears. The famous Schöningen spears from Germany, dated to approximately 300,000 years ago, are beautifully made, carefully balanced weapons. But here's the thing about thrusting spears. You have to get close, really close. Close enough to smell the animal's breath. Close enough to be gored by tusks, trampled by hooves, or mauled by claws. Imagine trying to hunt a woolly mammoth with a thrusting spear. You'd have to get within a few feet of an animal that weighs 6 tons and can kill you with a single swing of its trunk. Even hunting something smaller, like a bison or a wild boar, is incredibly dangerous up close. One wrong move, and you're dead. This is where throwing changes everything. The ability to kill from a distance is the ultimate game changer in the history of predation. Think about it. Every apex predator has some way to incapacitate prey while minimizing risk to themselves. Lions have claws and pack coordination. Crocodiles have ambush tactics and crushing jaws. Eagles have talons and the element of surprise from above. But humans? We have accuracy and distance. And that combination is more powerful than almost anything else in nature. The throwing spear, or javelin, seems simple. It's a straight shaft, usually 5 to 8 feet long, with a stone point attached to one end. But making an effective throwing spear requires sophisticated understanding of materials, balance, and aerodynamics. The shaft needs to be straight, which means carefully selecting wood and possibly heat treating it to remove natural curves. The point needs to be sharp and securely attached. The weight distribution needs to be just right so the spear flies true. And then there's the throw itself. Humans are exceptional throwers. In fact, we're the best throwers in the animal kingdom by a massive margin. Our shoulders, our rotating torsos, our ability to store and release elastic energy in our tendons, all of this evolved to make us incredible at hurling objects with force and accuracy. Studies have shown that a trained human can throw a spear at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour. That's fast enough to penetrate deeply into an animal's body, hitting vital organs and causing massive trauma. Even an untrained thrower can manage speeds of 60 to 70 kilometers per hour, which is still lethal at close range. But there was a problem. No matter how good your throwing technique, there's a physical limit to how far and how fast a human arm can propel a spear. Your shoulder can only rotate so fast. Your arm can only accelerate the spear so much. For early humans hunting in open environments, this was a real limitation. Get too close and the animal might charge. Stay too far back and your spear doesn't have enough power to penetrate. So, somebody, somewhere, had one of the most important ideas in human history. What if we made the arm longer? Enter the Atlatl. The word Atlatl comes from the Aztec language Nahuatl, but the tool itself is far, far older. An Atlatl is essentially a lever, a stick usually about 2 feet long, with a handle on one end and a hook or socket on the other. You place the butt end of your spear into that socket, hold the Atlatl in your hand, and when you throw, the Atlatl acts as an extension of your arm. The physics are elegant. By increasing the length of the lever, you increase the speed at which the tip of that lever moves. It's the same reason a longer baseball bat can hit a ball farther, or why a longer fishing rod can cast farther. The Atlatl effectively gives you a longer arm, which means you can accelerate the spear to much higher speeds. How much faster? Modern experiments have shown that an Atlatl can increase spear velocity by 50 to 100% compared to hand throwing. A spear thrown by hand might travel at 60 kilometers per hour. The same spear launched with an Atlatl can reach 120 to 150 kilometers per hour. That's the speed of a fastball in professional baseball. But it's not just about speed. The Atlatl also increases range dramatically. A hand-thrown spear might be effective up to 20 or 30 meters. With an Atlatl, skilled hunters could reliably hit targets at 50 to 70 meters, and potentially even farther. Some modern Atlatl enthusiasts have achieved accurate throws beyond 100 meters. Think about what this means in practical terms. You're hunting a herd of bison. Without an Atlatl, you need to get within 20 meters to have a good chance of a kill. That's close enough that the bison can see you, smell you, and decide whether to run or charge. With an Atlatl, you can strike from 50 or 60 meters away. The bison might not even know where the attack is coming from. By the time they react, you've already wounded or killed one of them. This is a fundamental shift in the predator-prey dynamic. For the first time in Earth's history, a relatively weak, slow primate could kill large, powerful animals without putting itself in immediate danger. We had become ranged attackers in a world of melee combat. So when did this revolution actually happen? The archaeological record is frustratingly incomplete, but we can piece together a timeline. The earliest definitive evidence of throwing spears comes from Schunningen, Germany, where those beautifully preserved wooden spears were found in a former lake bed. These spears date to around 300,000 years ago, and they're clearly designed for throwing, not thrusting. They're front-weighted, aerodynamic, and balanced in a way that only makes sense for projectiles. But throwing spears were probably used even earlier. Some researchers point to stone points from Africa that date back 500,000 years or more. These points show impact fractures consistent with being thrown or launched at high speed into prey animals. The problem is wood doesn't preserve well, so we don't have the spear shafts to prove it definitively. The Atlatl is even harder to pin down. The oldest confirmed Atlatl we've found comes from La Selle, France, and dates to around 18,000 years ago. But there are tantalizing hints that the technology might be much older. Some researchers believe that peculiar stone or bone hooks found at sites dating back 30 to 40,000 years could be Atlatl components, but this remains controversial. What we can say with confidence is that by the time modern humans spread out of Africa and into Eurasia, around 70,000 to 50,000 years ago, they almost certainly had both throwing spears and Atlatls. And this gave them an enormous advantage over the other hominins they encountered, as well as over the Megafauna that had never faced a predator quite like this before.
Let's talk about what it was actually like to use these weapons in the field. Because understanding the mechanics is one thing, but understanding the hunt itself is something else entirely. You're a part of a hunting band, maybe 8 to 10 individuals. You've been tracking a herd of horses for hours, reading their tracks, understanding their movements. The horses are grazing in a valley, and you've positioned yourself and your companions on a slight rise about 60 meters away, just within effective Atlatl range. The wind is in your favor, blowing from the horses toward you, carrying their scent, but not yours to them. You've already selected your target, a young adult that's separated slightly from the main herd. Not the strongest animal, but not the weakest either. A good balance of meat and manageable risk. You fit your spear into the Atlatl socket, feeling the familiar weight and balance. The spear is about 6 feet long, tipped with a carefully napped stone point that took hours to make. You've practiced this throw thousands of times. You know exactly how to angle your body, how to transfer your weight from back foot to front foot, how to use your torso rotation to add power. The other hunters are ready. Their spear is also loaded. Someone gives a subtle signal. You rise slightly, draw back, and throw. The Atlatl whips forward. The spear releases with a snap. For a moment, it seems to hang in the air, and then it streaks toward the target. The horse sees movement, starts to turn, but it's too late. The spear strikes high on the shoulder, penetrating deep into the chest cavity. The horse staggers. The herd explodes into motion, but several more spears are already in flight. One misses. 2 more hit. Within seconds, the valley is empty except for one wounded horse struggling to move. Your group approaches carefully, ready with backup spears, but the damage is done. The stone point has caused massive internal bleeding. Within minutes, the animal collapses. You've just secured maybe 300 kilograms of meat, enough to feed your entire band for days. And you did it from a distance where the horse could barely threaten you. No one was trampled, no one was kicked in the head. The most dangerous moment was the approach after the animal was already dying. This is the power of projectile weaponry. This is why humans became apex predators. But let's be clear about something. Having an Atlatl doesn't automatically make you a successful hunter. These weapons required immense skill to use effectively. Modern experiments with Atlatl enthusiasts show that it takes months of regular practice just to develop basic competence, and years to achieve the kind of accuracy and power that would have been necessary for consistent hunting success. Paleolithic hunters would have started training as children, probably around age 5 or 6, throwing light practice spears at stationary targets. By their teenage years, they'd be practicing on moving targets, learning to judge distance and lead their throws to account for the target's movement. By adulthood, they'd have tens of thousands of throws under their belt, an intuitive understanding of trajectory, wind, and the behavior of prey animals. Archaeological evidence supports this picture of intensive practice. At some European sites from the Upper Paleolithic, researchers have found concentrations of stone points with impact damage in specific areas, suggesting these were practice ranges where hunters honed their skills. And the skills weren't just physical. Using an Atlatl effectively required deep knowledge of animal behavior. You needed to know how to approach without being detected, where to aim for a quick kill, how to predict where a wounded animal might flee. You needed to understand wind conditions, how cold air affects spear flight differently than warm air, how to compensate for shooting uphill or downhill. In many ways, Atlatl hunting was as cognitively demanding as it was physically demanding, and this may have had profound effects on human brain evolution.
There's a hypothesis in paleoanthropology
that the development of complex projectile weaponry created strong selective pressure for improved cognitive abilities, specifically for spatial reasoning, hand-eye coordination, and the ability to plan multiple steps ahead. Think about it. To hunt successfully with an Atlatl, you need to simultaneously track a moving target, calculate its future position, adjust for wind and distance, coordinate your body movements, and then make split-second adjustments as you release. This isn't just throwing. It's a complex computational task that requires significant brain power. Some researchers argue that individuals who are better at this kind of spatial reasoning and motor planning would have been more successful hunters, would have had better access to high-quality food resources, and therefore would have been more likely to survive and reproduce. Over thousands of generations, this could have contributed to the expansion of brain regions associated with these cognitive functions. It's not the only factor in human brain evolution, obviously, but it might have been one important piece of the puzzle. There's also a social dimension to consider. Atlatl hunting wasn't a solo activity. It required coordination between multiple hunters, which meant communication, planning, and shared knowledge. The best hunters would have been valuable members of their communities, their skills passed down through demonstration and practice. This creates a feedback loop. Better weapons allow for more successful hunting. More successful hunting means better nutrition, which supports larger brains. Larger brains enable more sophisticated tool-making and better hunting strategies, and around it goes. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Because the Atlatl didn't just change how humans hunted animals, it changed how humans interacted with each other, and not in a peaceful way. There's growing evidence that projectile weapons, including Atlatls, played a significant role in prehistoric warfare. And this makes sense when you think about it. If a weapon is effective against a mammoth, it's also effective against other humans. Several Paleolithic burial sites show evidence of death by projectile weapons. Stone points embedded in bones, impact fractures consistent with high-velocity strikes, injuries that could only have been caused by spears or Atlatl darts hitting the body at high speed. One famous example is the Nautaruk site in Kenya, dated to around 10,000 years ago. Researchers found the remains of 27 individuals, including men, women, and children, many showing signs of violent death. Some had stone projectile points embedded in their skeletons. Some had blunt force trauma to the skull. This wasn't a battle between warriors, it was a massacre. While this site postdates the Paleolithic, it shows us that projectile weapons were being used in human-on-human violence even in prehistoric times. And there's no reason to think this pattern was new 10,000 years ago. If anything, the evidence suggests that intergroup violence has been part of the human story for much longer. This is uncomfortable to think about, but it's important. The same technology that allowed humans to hunt more effectively also made us more dangerous to each other. An Atlatl gives you the ability to kill from a distance, which means you can attack with less risk to yourself. It makes ambushes more effective. It changes the tactical calculations of conflict. Some researchers have proposed that the development of projectile weapons actually escalated the lethality of human conflict, but paradoxically may have also created pressure for more cooperative behavior within groups. If your group is armed with Atlatls, you're a serious threat, but you're also vulnerable to other groups with Atlatls. This creates a strong incentive for forming alliances, establishing territories, and developing social norms about when violence is acceptable. In other words, the Atlatl didn't just make us better hunters, it may have shaped our social evolution, contributing to the complex tribal structures, alliance networks, and territorial behaviors that characterize human societies. Let's shift gears and talk about what happened when humans armed with Atlatls encountered animals that had never seen projectile weapons before, because this is where we see the full ecological impact of this technology. When modern humans spread out of Africa and into new continents, they brought their Atlatls with them,
And in Australia, Eurasia, and eventually the Americas, they encountered ecosystems filled with megafauna, giant animals that had evolved without significant predation pressure from humans or human-like hominins. In Australia, humans arrived around 65,000 years ago. Within a few thousand years, a huge percentage of the large animal species on the continent went extinct. We're talking about animals like Diprotodon, a giant wombat the size of a car, Thylotoleo, a marsupial lion with incredibly powerful jaws, giant kangaroos, enormous birds, massive reptiles, dozens of species, gone. In Eurasia, the pattern is less clear because humans and megafauna coexisted for longer periods, but there's still a correlation between human expansion and megafaunal extinction. Woolly mammoths, woolly rhinos, giant cave bears, all of these disappeared as human populations grew. And in the Americas, the pattern is even more dramatic. Humans crossed into North America sometime between 25,000 and 15,000 years ago. The exact timing is still debated, but what's not debated is what happened next. Within a relatively short period, maybe 1,000 to 2,000 years, more than 70 large mammal species in the Americas went extinct. Mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, American lions, giant short-faced bears, camels, horses, all gone. Now, it's important to note that climate change was also happening during these periods. The end of the Ice Age brought dramatic environmental shifts. So it's not accurate to say that humans with Atlatls were the only cause of these extinctions. But there's very strong evidence that human hunting was a significant, possibly the decisive factor. We have kill sites where mammoth remains are found with stone projectile points embedded in the bones. We have evidence of hunting camps where large numbers of animals were processed. And we have the timing. Megafaunal extinction consistently follows human arrival in regions where humans hadn't previously existed. What makes this so devastating from the animal's perspective is that they had no evolutionary experience with projectile weapons. A mammoth knows how to deal with a pack of wolves. It knows to defend itself with its tusks, to protect its young by forming a circle, to use its size and strength to intimidate predators. But what does a mammoth do when sharp stone points start flying at it from 60 meters away? From a direction it can't see clearly, from a predator that doesn't behave like any predator it's encountered before? Well, the answer is, it probably doesn't know what to do. And that lack of defensive adaptation makes these animals incredibly vulnerable to human hunters with Atlatls. Some researchers describe this as blitzkrieg hunting, a rapid, intense period of predation that these animal populations simply couldn't withstand. Other researchers favor a more gradual model, where humans and climate change together created pressures that animals couldn't overcome. But either way, the result is the same. Within a relatively short time after humans arrive with projectile technology, the large animals disappear. This raises an ethical question that I think is worth considering. Did Paleolithic humans understand the long-term consequences of their hunting? Did they realize they were driving species extinct? Almost certainly not. These extinctions probably happened over multiple generations, slowly enough that no individual hunter would have noticed the decline. But the fact remains, humans with Atlatls were so effective at hunting that we fundamentally altered the ecosystems we entered. We became for the first time a species capable of causing extinctions, not through habitat destruction or competition, but directly through predation. We became an apex predator unlike any the world had seen before. And the weapon that made it possible was a stick with a hook on the end. Now, let's talk about how the Atlatl eventually got replaced and why that transition took so long. Because here's something that surprises a lot of people. The bow and arrow didn't immediately replace the Atlatl when it was invented. In fact, in many parts of the world, both weapons coexisted for thousands of years. The bow and arrow probably originated in Africa sometime between 70,000 and 80,000 years ago based on the earliest stone points that are small and light enough to be arrowheads. But it didn't spread globally for a long time. In Europe, bows don't appear until around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. In Australia, they never appear at all in the prehistoric period. And in parts of the Americas, atlatls remained the primary hunting weapon right up until European contact in the 1500s. Why the slow adoption? The bow and arrow has some clear advantages. It's faster to reload. You can carry more ammunition. The arrows are smaller and easier to make. And in skilled hands, it could be more accurate at medium ranges. But the atlatl has advantages too. It delivers more kinetic energy to the target, which means better penetration on large animals. The spears are easier to recover and reuse. An atlatl is simpler to make and maintain than a bow. And perhaps most importantly, the atlatl is easier to learn for basic competency, even if
Perhaps most importantly, the atlatl is easier to learn for basic competence, even if mastery takes just as long. For hunting large animals, the atlatl often makes more sense. For hunting small game, birds, or in warfare where rate of fire matters, the bow is superior. So in many cultures, both weapons existed side by side, used for different purposes. The Aztecs are a perfect example. They used both atlatls and bows. The atlatl was considered a noble weapon, associated with the warrior class and with hunting large animals. Bows were more common among lower status fighters and hunters of small game. Both had their place in Aztec culture. In Arctic regions, atlatls were used alongside bows for hunting sea mammals. The atlatl's heavy spears were better for killing seals, walruses, and even small whales, while bows were used for caribou and birds. The point is, the atlatl wasn't made obsolete by the bow. It was specialized. It found niches where its advantages outweighed its disadvantages. And in those niches, it remained effective for thousands of years after supposedly superior technology appeared. This tells us something important about technology in general. The best tool isn't always the newest tool. It's the tool that best fits the task and the context. And for much of human history, the atlatl was the best tool for bringing down large, dangerous animals. Let me give you one more example of just how effective this weapon could be, because I think it really drives home the point. In the 1980s and 1990s, archaeologists and anthropologists started conducting experimental hunts using replica atlatls and stone-tipped spears, trying to understand exactly what Paleolithic hunters were capable of. One of the most interesting experiments was conducted by anthropologist John Whitaker and others. They found that a skilled atlatl user could consistently hit a human torso-sized target at 20 meters and still achieve reasonable accuracy out to 40 or 50 meters. But more impressive was the penetration. When they launched spears with stone points at animal carcasses, they found that the spears could penetrate 20 to 30 centimeters deep, easily enough to reach vital organs in large mammals. On one test shot into a bison carcass, the spear penetrated completely through the rib cage, traveled through both lungs, and exited the other side. This is devastating trauma. An animal hit like this is going to die quickly from massive internal bleeding and collapsed lungs. Even if it runs, it won't get far. Another experimenter, Llewellyn, achieved atlatl throws that exceeded 450 feet in distance. That's about 137 meters. Now, you wouldn't be hunting at that range because accuracy drops off significantly, but it demonstrates the sheer power these weapons can generate. Modern hunting regulations, in the few places where atlatl hunting is legal, treat the weapon as equivalent to a bow in terms of lethality. In some states in the US, you can hunt deer with an atlatl during bow season, and the success rates are comparable to bow hunting. Think about that. A weapon that's 20,000 years old, made with Stone Age technology, is still effective enough today that it's legally recognized as a viable hunting tool. That's how good the atlatl actually is. So where does all this leave us? What can we learn from the story of the atlatl and the throwing spear? First, I think it challenges our assumptions about primitive technology. When we think of Stone Age weapons, we tend to picture crude clubs and rough spears, tools that barely work. But the reality is far more sophisticated. The atlatl represents a deep understanding of physics, materials, and ergonomics. It's a lever system that increases mechanical advantage. It's carefully designed and refined over thousands of generations. It's technology in the fullest sense of the word. Second, it shows us how deeply tools shape who we are. The Atlatl didn't just change what humans could do, it changed what humans were. It allowed us to access high-quality protein more reliably, which supported larger brains and more complex societies. It created selection pressure for improved cognitive abilities. It influenced our social structures and our patterns of cooperation and conflict. Technology and evolution aren't separate processes, they're intertwined. Third, it reminds us that the most impactful innovations are often not the most complex. The Atlatl is basically a stick with a hook. It's one of the simplest mechanical devices you can imagine, and yet its impact on human history is arguably as significant as agriculture, metallurgy, or the wheel. Sometimes the simplest ideas are the most revolutionary. And finally, I think the story of the Atlatl should give us a sense of humility. We modern humans like to think we're fundamentally different from our ancestors, that we've transcended our animal nature through civilization and technology. But the truth is, we're still the same species that hunted mammoths with throwing spears. We still have the same brains, the same instincts, the same capacity for both cooperation and violence. The Atlatl made us apex predators. It gave us the power to reshape ecosystems and drive species extinct. And we've been living with that power and with the responsibility that comes with it ever since. Today, the Atlatl exists mostly as a curiosity. There are hobbyists who craft replica weapons and compete in throwing competitions. There are experimental archaeologists trying to understand exactly how our ancestors lived and hunted. But for most people, it's a forgotten technology, something from a world so distant it barely seems real. But I think it's worth remembering, because that stick with a hook, that simple mechanical device, is part of what made us human. It's part of the bridge from cautious scavenger to apex predator. It's part of the reason why, when we look out at the world today, humans are the ones in control. We didn't get here with fangs or claws. We got here with ingenuity, with practice, with a deep understanding of trajectories and timing, with a piece of wood and a stone point and the willingness to throw it as hard as we could at something that could easily kill us. It undoubtedly worked. So the next time you throw a ball, or toss something into a trash can, or watch an athlete hurl a javelin across a field, remember, you're using a talent that goes back hundreds of thousands of years, a talent that helped shape human evolution, a talent that made us who we are. We are the throwing ape, and the Atlatl is the weapon that proved it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into ancient technology and what it reveals about human evolution, hit that like button. Drop a comment below telling me what extinct megafauna you wish was still around, or whether you think you could actually hunt a mammoth with an Atlatl. Don't forget to subscribe to keep getting stories like this, and if you want more, check out my video on how humans actually survived the Ice Age. I'll see you in the next one.